Welcome to the show. Today we aim to explore what role spirituality plays in the corporate world. In discovering this topic, we have with us Azim Jamal, the corporate Sufi. Azim Jamal is a sought-after inspirational speaker, management consultant, and executive coach. He is also an international author with several best-selling books, including The Power of Giving and The Corporate Sufi. And later today, we will learn about the concept of soul retrieval through certified soul and past life coach Rosanna Ienko. Rosanna is an award-winning finalist of the National Best Books 2009 Awards and the best-selling author of Awakening the Divine Soul, Finding Your Life Purpose. She is also a shamanic practitioner and the founder of Motivational Mentoring for the Soul. Thank you for being on the show, Azim.
My pleasure.
Now, Azim, tell me about your background and tell me about the work that you do.
Well, if I go back to my young age, I failed all my exams in school. I was born in Tanzania, Africa. And in our days, if you get a 1 as a grade, it's a distinction. If you get a 9, it's the worst you can get.
Okay.
I got all 9s, except in English I got 5. So I was convinced I couldn't study. Science was not my cup of tea.
Okay.
And then I went to England to do an ACCA, which is like a chartered accounting degree in England. And I got the best result in the history of the college in accounting.
Okay.
And I came to Canada, did my CGA and my chartered financial planning degree. And I was a senior partner in accounting business until 1997, when I changed my career from accounting for business to accounting for life, when I had a soul-stirring experience working with the Afghan refugees in the developing world.
Okay, so when you worked in that environment, what was the trigger? What made you change from accounting to corporate work?
Well, you know, I spent 6 weeks working with the Afghan refugees, but there was one instance when I was in a hut with 14 Afghan refugees, and I was so shaken by the abject poverty, by the stories I heard, that I got physically sick in 20 minutes.
Okay.
So I walked out of the hut, the whole village was standing there, mostly women and children because most men had died. And I saw these young kids with rosy cheeks, with big eyes, and a smile on their face despite their plight. But I was so shaken that I didn't know what to do. So I was there no more than 20 seconds, but it seemed like eternity. Yeah. But I left. I went to a cab that was waiting for me, and my cab ride from the hut to the Marriott Hotel was 25 minutes. Okay. So I was driving in the back of the cab, I was sitting in the back of the cab, and I was shivering and I was sweating at the same time in the hot, blazing weather, looking out of the window of the cab. In the 25 minutes, something happened to my soul, and my life has never been the same. You know, I went home and I cried the whole night, and I went through this exercise of what should I do to help these people, and I realized that accounting, even though I had 3 degrees, I wasn't passionate. Okay. But my passion was in speaking and writing, and so I made a conscious choice to kind of change my career at that point.
Okay, so when you changed your career, now tell me more about being a corporate Sufi. What does that mean?
Well, when I changed my career, I struggled. I lost money for several years. You know, I almost lost everything I had. I almost, you know, went through a difficult time with my marriage because things were not working out. But eventually, when I was giving up, I had a sign to say, don't give up. And that changed everything for me. And the last 2-3 years have been very, very good for me. But the corporate Sufi is my branding. It's who I am. Okay. I'm a corporate person because I was an accountant for 20 years. I had 3 degrees. I work with businesses. And the Sufi is in me. You know, I use the word Sufi as a metaphor. Okay. You know, to define essence, not form. Okay. So how do you get to the essence very quickly? If you're going through a lot of difficulties in life, how do you get to the center very quickly? That's the essence, right? Not the form, not the outside. Being grounded in principles, values, ethics. Whatever you do, make sure it's true. Make sure it's authentic. Make sure it's real. And that makes it very powerful. And believing in the power of giving. The more you give, the more you have. The more you give, the more you create. And wanting spiritual abundance is how I define Sufi. Okay. And corporate, of course, you know, it's commerce, ambition, success, material abundance. And when you marry these two, you get somebody who is efficient, goal-oriented, productive, heart-centered, principle-centered, balanced individual who wants both material abundance, spiritual abundance. Okay. And why this is important? Because success without happiness is a big failure.
Now, some people would argue, Azim, that spirituality has no place in the corporate world. So help me make the connection that you've made between Sufism and the corporate world.
Well, if you look at my definition of corporate Sufi, it's a very balanced approach, right? It's not just spirituality. Now, if you look at the corporate issues that are prevalent across the world, and I've spoken to more than 1 million people in 26 countries, so I know them. They are stress, job satisfaction, social responsibility, sustaining your success, time management, energy management, self-management, life balance, finding good people, harnessing the energy of good people, retaining good people, and making that profit.
True.
So all these issues will be benefited from the corporate Sufi approach because it's a very balanced approach. It gives you job satisfaction, it's sustainable, you harness the energy of people because they enjoy what they do, they're passionate, so it works like a charm.
So Azim, what are you trying to balance? What are we balancing?
Well, I think, you know, the word balance, you have to define it, and people define it in different ways, but really it's an issue of what balance means to you. Chasing your own goals, not somebody else's goals. You know, having time for your health, for your spirituality, for your family, you know, for your work, for self-reflection. Finding that place that makes you feel that you have what you want in life, right? So that's what I mean by balance. And some people get so materialistic that they forget everything else in life, and they find out that their success becomes very shallow.
Okay. I often find, Azim, that we listen to stories of people that have found that balance, and we listen to that they have had some sort of a event occur in their life which has triggered them into making the life choice of either a balanced life choice, however people want to define that. Where I struggle with is what happens in that gap in between, because something triggers something, and then you have this space, and then you do something. So you often hear people tell stories of, you know, that they've either experienced themselves or seen somebody experience a tragic event, and then something changes for them, and then they choose something else. But there's not a lot of conversation between that in-between gap. So what happens there?
I think, you know, by and large, what happens is people don't make that jump. They have that experience, the spark is come, but then they get scared. The fear comes in of the unknown, and they worry about who's going to pay the mortgage and what will happen here, and they don't do anything.
Okay.
And that's a shame, because one of my life's mission is to help people find their life mission. You know, because I found my own. I struggled when I found it. I almost gave it up because it was not easy. And that's another thing, that when you find it and you follow it, it's not going to be easy. And there are reasons why it's not going to be easy, because the universe is testing you. Are you really serious about it? And you know, you pay your dues. So when you become that person, you know, you have the authenticity, you have the substance that is required to make a difference.
And you're right, that space is not easy. It's a very, very difficult space to be in. Now, if we take the words corporate Sufi, help me understand, how does that affect our day-to-day life? Is the terminology corporate Sufi just for businesses, or what does this mean for our personal lives? Well,
I think I use the word, again, corporate in a very general way. And everybody is in corporate. I mean, if you're a school teacher, whether you do what you do, what I do, you know, we're all making a living. And to me, corporate defines that you're making a living, doing something. You know, either you're using your passion, you're running a business. And so I'm using corporate in a very general, broad sense of the word, right? So anybody who's making a living is one part of it, and the Sufi is the making the difference, looking at the essence, not the form, getting to the core very quickly, right? And being grounded in principles, in values, in ethics, in authenticity. That whatever you do rings true for you. And you always want to give, because the more you give, the more you have. The more you give, the more you create. The more you give, the more you innovate. The more you give, the more you find. The more you give, the more you receive. That's the whole power of giving, which is really a core piece of this whole idea of corporate Sufi.
Perfect. With that thought, let's go for a break.
So in life, we chase things, we persist, and we get it, and say, oh, why did I get it? I was chasing the wrong things. So make sure that you persist, but make sure your persistence is enlightened.